The night is quiet, too quiet. Shadows twist in ways they shouldn't, and every sound feels alive. Something watches from the darkness, behind doors, under beds, in the empty streets. You think you're safe, but you're never alone. Every step, every whisper, every flicker of light could be the last thing you see. The nightmare isn't coming, it's already here.
I had signed up for DoorDash just to see if it was really as good as people claimed. At first, I hesitated. It took me nearly a month to push myself to take my first delivery. But once I started, I got hooked. A few deliveries a day turned into steady income, and before long, I quit my grocery store job. Soon, I was driving every evening after school, and most weekends too. That night, I decided to work later than usual. It was a holiday weekend, which meant more orders and better tips. I started around 8 p.m. and kept going well past midnight, mostly making runs to and from a 24/7 McDonald's. By the time it was a little after 2 a.m., I was exhausted, but I accepted one last order. It was another McDonald's delivery. The drop-off location immediately felt off. Instead of a house or apartment, the address pointed to a warehouse. In the delivery notes, it said, "Use the side entrance. Leave the order at the front desk." That was strange, but not unheard of. I delivered to late-night workplaces before. When I arrived, the parking lot stretched out wide and empty. Only a few semi-trucks sat scattered in the distance, like silent watchers in the dark. The building itself was massive, an old rectangular warehouse with barely any windows and a single entrance at the front. I double-checked the instructions. Side entrance. Reluctantly, I drove around the building and parked near a heavy metal door. It had a small, rectangular glass window at eye level. I leaned in, trying to see inside. Nothing. Just darkness, and a faint reflection of my own headlights staring back at me. Taking a breath, I grabbed the order and pushed the door open. The moment I stepped inside, a chill ran down my spine. The air was cold, still, unnaturally quiet. There was a small entry room, barely lit by a dim safety light in the corner. No front desk, no workers, no sound of machinery. Nothing. Just silence. I walked forward and turned the corner and froze. A long, narrow hallway stretched out in front of me, completely unlit. The darkness at the end was so thick, it felt like it was swallowing the space whole. I couldn't even see where it ended. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping the bag tighter. Something wasn't right. Most places with night shifts at least kept some lights on, but this felt abandoned, dead. I pulled out my phone again, checking the address for the third time. Everything matched, but deep down, a heavy sense of dread was building in my chest, because the more I listened, the more I realized just how silent the building really was. No footsteps, no voices, no machines. It was like I was completely alone, or worse, like I wasn't supposed to be there at all. I stood there for a few seconds, staring into the pitch-black hallway. Every instinct in my body was telling me not to go any further. There was no way I was walking into that darkness. Trying to stay calm, I pulled out my phone and tapped on the customer's number. If someone really worked here, they could come to me. The phone began to ring. At first, there was nothing. Then, a faint echo. My heart skipped. The ringing wasn't just coming from my phone. It was coming from somewhere deep inside the hallway. I froze, listening carefully.
It rang again, this time louder, closer. A cold wave of fear washed over me as I stared into the darkness, my eyes straining to see anything. And then I saw it. A faint glow. A phone screen moving slowly toward me from the far end of the corridor. "Hey, I've got a DoorDash order here," I called out, my voice sounding small and uncertain in the empty building. "I'm just gonna leave it right here for you." I quickly set the bag down on the floor near the entrance. The glow kept getting closer. And then I saw him. A large figure began to emerge from the darkness. At first, it was just a silhouette, but with each step, more of him became visible. Tall, broad, moving unnaturally fast. Too fast. He didn't say a single word, not even a thank you, just walking straight toward me with that same steady pace. Something about the way he moved felt wrong, not normal, not human almost. My chest tightened, my breathing became shallow. For a split second, I had this terrifying feeling, like someone else was standing behind me, watching, waiting. That was enough. I turned around and walked quickly back toward the door, trying not to run. The moment I stepped outside, I rushed to my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I pulled away, I glanced back one last time. Through the small glass window on the metal door, I saw movement. A shadow shifting inside. I didn't wait to see more. I drove off and called it a night. For the next couple of days, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just a weird delivery, a strange guy, an uncomfortable situation. But nothing actually happened, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Until Monday evening. I was out driving again when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, and my stomach dropped. It was the police. They asked me why I had been at a specific warehouse around 2:30 a.m. on Saturday. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. I explained everything, that I was a DoorDash driver, that I had a delivery there. I even gave them the receipt as proof. There was a pause. Then they told me what really happened. The warehouse was completely closed that entire weekend. No workers, no night shift, no one inside. When employees returned on Monday, they found a DoorDash order sitting in the middle of the hallway, exactly where I had left it, which meant whoever I saw that night was never supposed to be there. The account used to place the order was fake, and the person inside, they had broken into the building. But the most disturbing part wasn't that someone had been hiding in the darkness. It was this. They never took the food, not even a touch. The bag was still sealed, untouched, waiting. Like that order was never the reason I was called there. I still think about it sometimes, about that man, about the way he walked toward me without speaking, and about what might have happened if I had stayed there just a little longer.
I was 23 at the time, working full-time at a small pizza shop in a quiet rural town. It wasn't much, just a few tables inside, but most of our business came from deliveries and takeout. My best friend Tim worked there too. We had both started during college and just never left. The job was easy, almost too easy. Most nights were slow, with just a steady trickle of orders. Nothing crazy, nothing stressful. But that night, something felt off from the start. A light storm rolled in, rain tapping steadily against the windows. The streets outside were nearly empty and business was unusually quiet. By 10 p.m., Tim looked over at me and said, "Let's just start cleaning up. Maybe we can even clock out early." I nodded. It sounded like a good plan. I grabbed some rags and started wiping down the tables while Tim moved toward the back. The shop felt calm, almost too calm. Then, the phone rang. The sharp sound cut through the silence, making me flinch slightly. I walked over and picked it up after a few rings. "Thanks for calling. How can we help?" Silence. I frowned, waiting. "Hello?" Nothing. No breathing, no movement, just dead air. After about 5 seconds, I slowly lowered the phone and hung up. "Probably just a prank call," I muttered. I went back to cleaning, but something about it lingered in my mind. That silence didn't feel normal. As I wiped the front table, a faint glare caught my attention from the window. I looked up. A car was parked a few spots away in the lot. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I noticed something strange. There was a faint glow inside the car, like someone was holding a phone. The rain made it hard to see clearly, but I could tell someone was sitting in there, completely still, watching. That uneasy feeling crept in again. The shop sat alone on its own lot. There were no other cars nearby, no other buildings close enough to matter, which meant that car was there for us. A moment later, the phone rang again. This time, Tim was closer. He picked it up. I stayed where I was, watching the car. I could hear a faint, muffled voice coming through the phone, but I couldn't make out the words. Tim spoke briefly, then hung up. At that exact moment, the light inside the car turned off and the engine started. The car slowly pulled out of the lot and disappeared into the rainy night. I turned to Tim. "Did you see that car out there?" He shrugged. "Yeah, just some guy ordering a pizza." I frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would someone order delivery while sitting right outside the shop? Tim didn't seem bothered. "People are weird, man." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was overthinking it. Still, as I looked back out at the now empty parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever was in that car had been watching us the whole time. Tim started making the pizza while I went back to cleaning, but my focus was gone. My eyes kept drifting toward the window. The parking lot was empty now, but that uneasy feeling hadn't left. About 10 minutes later, Tim boxed up the pizza and handed it to me. "Delivery's yours." I grabbed the order, pulled up the address, and headed out into the rain. It was about an 11-minute drive. Not bad. The roads were completely empty, the storm keeping everyone indoors. My headlights cut through the darkness as I followed the directions into a quiet neighborhood filled with large, older homes. Eventually, the GPS led me down a long driveway that opened into a small cul-de-sac with 3 separate houses. I followed the route and stopped in front of the correct one. The house looked expensive, but old. The kind of place that felt like it had too many secrets buried inside its walls. I stepped out into the rain, pizza in hand, and walked up to the front door. "Pizza delivery?" No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I stepped back and looked up at the house. Every light was off. Not a single room lit. A strange feeling crept over me. I called Tim and asked him to contact the customer. A moment later, he told me the call went straight to voicemail. I sighed, frustrated. "Fake order," I muttered. It wasn't the first time. I ran back to my car, tossed the pizza onto the passenger seat, and started backing out. When I got back to the shop, Tim was already finishing up cleaning. "No more orders," he said. "We're good." I nodded, still a little annoyed, and tossed the pizza into the trash. We headed to the back to clean the ovens and wipe down the counters. The storm outside had gotten heavier. Rain pounded against the roof, filling the silence. Then, bang! The sound exploded from the front of the shop. We both froze. "What the hell was that?" Tim whispered. We rushed to the front. At first, everything looked normal.
Then Tim pointed at the door. There! Crack. A small but noticeable fracture in the glass. I stepped closer and slowly opened the door. Sitting right outside was a heavy rock, big enough to shatter the glass if thrown harder. I looked around. The parking lot was completely empty. No cars, no people. Nothing. Just the rain. A cold chill ran down my back. "Should we call the cops?" I asked. Tim hesitated. "It's almost closing time. Let's just tell the manager tomorrow." I didn't like it, but I didn't argue. We finished cleaning as quickly as we could and left through the back door where our cars were parked. On the drive home, everything replayed in my head. The silent phone call, the car in the parking lot, the fake delivery, the rock through the door. None of it felt random anymore. It felt connected, and that realization made my stomach turn. When I pulled into my driveway, the rain was still pouring. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me. It was late. I should have gone straight to bed, but I felt restless, hungry. I walked into the kitchen, and then I heard it. The sound of tires splashing through water outside. A car pulling up, slowly, deliberately. My heart started pounding. I walked to the window and carefully peeked through the curtain, and froze. A car was parked directly in front of my driveway. Even through the rain, I recognized it instantly. It was the same car, the one from the pizza shop. A cold wave of fear crashed over me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just stood there, watching. The engine was still running, but I couldn't see inside. A full minute passed, then another. No movement. My hands started shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Tim. I think someone followed me home," I whispered. "What? Are you serious?" he said, panic rising in his voice. "Call the cops, right now." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me, and hung up. I dialed 911. The operator told me officers were on their way and to stay hidden. Then, bang, a car door slammed outside. I froze. Slow footsteps echoed through the rain, coming up my driveway. Closer, closer. I slowly moved away from the window into the shadows. The footsteps reached the front of my house, then continued, across the wall, toward the window, and stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the rain sounded louder now. I stood there, barely breathing. Then I stepped forward, just a little. I pulled the curtain aside, just an inch, and looked out. A man was standing right there, staring directly at me. His eyes were cold, empty, like he had been waiting for that exact moment. I jerked back, letting the curtain fall. Before I could even react, bang! He slammed his hand against the glass. I stumbled backward, heart racing, completely frozen in fear. And then, nothing. No more banging, no footsteps, just the rain. Minutes later, the police arrived, but by the time they searched outside, the man was gone. The car was gone, like none of it ever happened. I told them everything, from the shop to the delivery to the man at my window. They listened, but I could tell they didn't fully believe me. And honestly, part of me didn't understand it either. There was no clear reason, no explanation, no motive, just a series of events that felt too precise to be random and too disturbing to forget. Even now, whenever it rains late at night, that same feeling comes back, like someone might still be out there, watching, waiting.
I started doing deliveries for my parents' restaurant when I was in high school. I had just turned 16 and gotten my driver's license, and my parents were excited to finally offer delivery service. I didn't want to work the register or wait tables, so driving seemed like the perfect option. At first, I actually enjoyed it. After a few months, I got comfortable with the job. I knew the roads, the neighborhoods, the shortcuts. Nothing really surprised me anymore until that night. It was a Thursday around 8 p.m. when my dad handed me an order. "Pretty far one," he said casually. I grabbed the bag and headed to the car, my mom's SUV, and entered the address into my phone. 25 minutes away. That was unusual. Our town was small. A 25-minute drive meant I'd be heading way out toward the edge of nowhere. Still, I didn't think too much of it. I started driving. At first, everything felt normal. Street lights, houses, the occasional car passing by. But as the minutes went by, things started to change. The houses became fewer, the roads became darker, and the silence became heavier. Soon, I realized I didn't recognize the area at all. I still had about 10 minutes left on the drive, and now I was surrounded by nothing but scattered farmhouses, each one sitting far back from the road. No streetlights, no people, just darkness stretching in every direction. A strange uneasiness settled in my chest. I wasn't exactly scared, but I was definitely uncomfortable. Then my GPS told me to turn. I slowed down and looked ahead. It was a narrow, unpaved path leading away from the main road. At the end of it, barely visible in the distance, was a farmhouse. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "This has to be it," I muttered to myself. I turned onto the path. The tires crunched loudly against the dirt and gravel as I drove forward. The headlights barely reached the house, revealing just enough to make it feel wrong. Too quiet, too isolated. By the time I reached the end, the path opened into a patch of grass in front of the house. There was no proper driveway, just an open field. I hesitated. Should I drive onto the grass? It didn't feel right, so I parked where the path ended and stepped out of the car. The moment I did, the silence hit me. Hard. No wind, no animals, no distant traffic, just the faint sound of my own footsteps on the grass. I started walking toward the house, the bag held tightly in my hand. The porch light was on, but every other light in the house was off. That alone made my heart beat faster. As I got closer, I kept glancing over my shoulder. Something about being out there, alone, didn't feel right. The air itself felt heavy, like I wasn't supposed to be there. Just before I reached the porch, I heard it. A loud creaking sound, like a wooden door slowly opening. It came from behind the house. I froze mid-step. My heart started pounding in my chest. I turned my head slightly, trying to listen. Silence again. I didn't wait. I quickly stepped onto the porch, set the food down by the door, rang the doorbell, and immediately turned around. I started walking fast, then faster, then almost running. Suddenly, I regretted not parking closer. The distance between me and the car now felt way too long. Each step sounded louder than it should have. Too loud, too exposed. Then, I heard something else. Footsteps behind me. Fast, getting closer. The footsteps behind me were getting louder, faster, closing the distance. My heart started racing as panic took over. I turned around, and what I saw froze my blood. 3 men sprinting straight at me through the darkness. For a split second, my mind went blank. Then instinct kicked in. I turned and ran as fast as I could. The grass beneath my feet made it hard to move quickly, and I could already hear them gaining on me. Their footsteps were heavy, aggressive, determined. I didn't even make it halfway back to my car. One of them slammed into me from behind, knocking me hard to the ground. The air was forced out of my lungs as I hit the grass. Before I could react, another one grabbed my arms and pinned me down. "Help!" I shouted, my voice breaking.
but I already knew no one was out there to hear me. One of them started going through my pockets, ripping out everything, my phone, my wallet, anything they could grab. It all happened so fast, too fast. I tried to fight back, but it was useless. They were bigger, stronger, and completely in control. Then, a sharp pain exploded in my stomach. One of them kicked me hard before stepping back. "Let's go," another one shouted. And just like that, they were gone. I lay there for a moment, gasping for air, trying to understand what had just happened. Then, I saw headlights. Their car. It sped off down the path, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. I slowly pushed myself up, my body shaking. Everything was gone. My phone, my money, everything. I looked around. The farmhouse stood there in silence. No lights turned on. No one came outside. It was like no one had ever been there at all. I didn't know what else to do, so I started walking, back toward the main road. Each step felt heavier than the last. My body ached, and the darkness around me felt even more suffocating now. I had no idea how long I walked. Maybe 30 minutes, maybe more. Time didn't feel real anymore. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A police car. Relief hit me so hard I almost collapsed. They pulled over and rushed out, asking if I was okay. My parents had called them. When I didn't return or answer my phone, they knew something was wrong. I explained everything. The farmhouse, the footsteps, the 3 men. The officers listened carefully. Later, they searched the area. Behind the farmhouse, they found a small barn. Inside was another delivery bag from a different restaurant, untouched. That's when everything became clear. I wasn't the first one. They had tried this before, luring delivery drivers out to that isolated house, waiting in the dark and attacking when the moment was right. The real owners of the farmhouse were out of town. They had nothing to do with it. My phone was eventually found thrown in a field nearby, but the car those men used, it took 3 weeks to locate, and when they finally found it, it was nearly 400 miles away, stripped, empty, gone. It's been almost a year since that night, and those 3 men, they were never identified, never caught. Sometimes I think about how easily things could have been worse if they had wanted more than just my stuff, if they hadn't left so quickly, if I hadn't gotten lucky. I might not be here telling this story. And ever since that night, I've never looked at a quiet, empty road the same way again.
I was driving my delivery van back from a late out-of-town drop-off. It was around 11 p.m. and a steady rain was falling, turning the road slick and reflective. Nights like that always felt longer, quieter, the kind of silence that presses in on you the farther you get from the city. I didn't usually work that late, but sometimes a delivery had to be made after hours. That meant long stretches of empty highway with nothing but darkness on both sides. No houses, no lights, just road and whatever might be out there. After a while, I noticed headlights ahead of me. A pickup truck. It was moving unusually slow. At first, I figured the driver was being cautious because of the rain, but this was too slow. It almost felt deliberate, like they didn't want anyone to pass. I eased off the gas and followed behind them for a minute, my patience wearing thin. Then I signaled to go around, but just as I was about to pass, the truck suddenly swerved. Its tires lost grip on the wet road, and it slid off to the side, disappearing down a small slope into the trees. I hit the brakes hard and pulled over. For a moment, I just sat there, staring. "Seriously?" I muttered. I could have just driven off. It wasn't my fault. But something about leaving didn't sit right with me. I pulled out my phone and tried to call 911. No signal, of course. I looked back toward the truck. No movement. No lights flashing. Nothing. That uneasy feeling crept in again. Still, I couldn't just leave someone there. I stepped out into the rain. Cold water soaked through my clothes almost instantly as I made my way down the slope, carefully stepping over wet leaves and loose dirt. The truck was wedged between some bushes. It didn't look badly damaged. I approached the driver's side window. Fogged up. I couldn't see inside. I knocked. No response. So I slowly opened the door. Inside, a man sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He was trying over and over to start the truck, his movements frantic. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked cautiously. "Do you need help?" He stopped, slowly looked up at me. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything, just stared. Then, in a low, flat voice, he said, "Can you give me a ride?" Something about the way he said it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't panic. It wasn't relief. It was calm. Too calm. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "I can take you to the nearest gas station. You can call for help there." He paused, thinking, then gave a small nod. "Okay." He stepped out of the truck. As we walked back toward my van, I could feel it, his eyes on me. Every time I glanced back, he was already looking, not blinking, not speaking, just watching me, like he was studying something. I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe he's just shaken from the crash, I thought. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. We got into the van. I started driving, and the silence between us began to feel heavier with each mile.
The van's interior was dimly lit by the dashboard, the rain hitting the roof like a slow, constant drum. Every droplet sounded louder than it should, echoing against the quiet weight of the night. I tried small talk at first. "So, where exactly are you headed?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the slick road. He didn't answer. I glanced at him. His face was pale, almost sickly, and his eyes, too wide, too still. The way they reflected the dash lights, it was like looking into something that shouldn't exist. You okay back there?" I tried again. He finally spoke, and his voice was low, monotone, almost like a whisper meant for himself. "Just drive. Don't stop." My stomach sank. Something about that order felt like a warning. I nodded slowly, forcing my hands steady on the wheel. Minutes passed. Rain streaked the windshield, headlights from distant cars barely breaking the black horizon. I tried to shake the unease building in my chest. Then he spoke again, softer this time, almost casual. "Sometimes people don't make it to where they're supposed to go." I swallowed hard. The hairs on my arms stood up. "What do you mean?" I asked, though my voice sounded smaller than usual. He didn't answer, just stared out the window, face blank. The road curved sharply, and I slowed down. My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. That's when I noticed it. A figure standing in the middle of the road behind us. I slammed the brakes. The figure vanished before I could see clearly. Just gone. I exhaled shakily, gripping the wheel tight. "Did you see that?" I asked. He turned to me slowly, almost unnaturally, his calm voice steady. "Some things follow you. Some things choose you." I realized then I had made a mistake I couldn't undo. because whatever I had picked up wasn't human. The van felt colder suddenly. The air thickened, like the night itself was pressing in from all sides. I tried to focus on the road, but I could feel it, his presence, leaning closer, watching me, controlling the space around me. I wasn't driving anymore. I was just moving, and he was deciding where we went. And the rain didn't just fall on the windshield anymore. It felt like it was inside me, in my bones, whispering that nothing on this road would ever be the same.
It was a slow night at Domino's. The kind where the fluorescent lights hum just a little too loud and the empty chairs seem to stare at you. I was in the back, stacking pizza boxes, when a man walked in. His eyes were hollow, dark rings under them like he hadn't slept in days, or maybe hadn't slept at all. He seemed timid, shifting from foot to foot, clutching a slip of paper tightly. My coworker at the counter took the order. I tried not to look, but something about him made my skin crawl. A medium pizza, that's all. But when he handed the slip of paper to my coworker, I noticed something chilling: the address. It wasn't a normal street number, just a GPS coordinate, a set of numbers that led somewhere specific, but off the map. 10 minutes later, I was on the road, van loaded with hot pizza, the storm outside pounding down hard. The streets were empty, shadows twisting in the rain like living things. Halfway there, I noticed headlights behind me, a lone car swaying with the road, not speeding, just moving strangely, like it was following, always keeping the exact distance from my van. I felt the unease building like an invisible hand pressing on my chest. Every glance in the rearview mirror made me jump. Something about this car wasn't right. Then, up ahead, I saw the neighborhood. The GPS had led me to an old section of town, houses long abandoned or left to decay. The rain-slicked streets reflected the dim porch lights like little mirrors of the night itself. I stopped in front of the house indicated by the GPS. All the lights were out. Too quiet. Too empty. I stepped out, pizza in hand, rain dripping down my neck. Every sound, the soft splash of my shoes on the wet concrete, the distant rumble of thunder, seemed amplified, like the night was holding its breath. That's when I saw him, a man stepping out from the shadows of the corner of the house, tall, broad-shouldered, hood covering his face. But those eyes, glinting in the dim light, stopped me cold. "Hey," I started, voice trembling slightly. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. "You're late," he said, holding a key in one hand, a key to the house I was about to enter. Something primal screamed at me to run. I did. I dropped the bag, sprinted back to the van, and floored it. The headlights of another car flashed behind me. Someone else, or maybe him, now chasing. By the time I looked back, both of them were gone. Just the rain and the night remained, whispering that I had barely escaped something far worse than I could imagine. I drove back through the storm, hands shaking on the wheel, heart hammering like a drum. The rain was relentless, blurring streetlights into ghostly streaks. My mind kept replaying those eyes, hollow and glowing faintly, like they belonged to something that shouldn't exist. When I got back to the pizzeria, everything seemed normal, almost too normal. My coworker gave me a puzzled look. "Where were you? The guy never came in. We checked." I froze. The GPS slip was gone too, vanished from my pocket like it had never existed.
I felt a cold sweat creep down my spine. Something was wrong. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just nerves, a bad storm and a late-night delivery gone wrong. But that night, strange things started happening at Domino's. Boxes would move on their own. Ingredients vanished from the fridge. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers, soft, urgent, coming from the back room where the lights flickered even though they were turned off. Then came the calls. No number, just static. And then a faint voice, almost a whisper. "Deliver it, or we'll come for you." I checked the security footage the next morning. My van was parked outside, but what I saw on the camera made my stomach twist. In the reflection of the wet street, I saw him standing behind the van, watching, eyes glowing faintly in the gray dawn, like the storm had conjured him out of the night. And then he vanished. I never took another late-night delivery again. But sometimes, when the storm hits just right, I swear I see headlights in the distance, waiting, always waiting. I used to deliver for my parents' restaurant back in high school. I had just gotten my driver's license, and the idea of driving sounded far better than being stuck as a waiter or cashier. At first, it was easy money, nothing stressful. Just pick up orders, drop them off, get a tip. It was a Thursday night around 8 p.m., and my dad handed me an order. I drove out in my mom's SUV, following the GPS. The directions led me farther out than I'd ever gone, past the last stretch of streetlights, past small clusters of farmhouses. The road grew rough, unpaved, and the wind seemed to howl louder as I drove down the narrow path. I could feel the darkness closing in around me. The night was quiet, too quiet, with only the tires crunching over gravel. Up ahead, the GPS led me to a small clearing, a field in front of an old farmhouse. The porch light flickered, barely illuminating the doorway. My stomach twisted. Something about the house felt wrong. I parked on the grass and stepped out. Every sound of my boots seemed amplified, echoing in the empty space around me. I carried the order up the path, glancing over my shoulder constantly. From the back of the house, I heard the creak of a wooden door swinging open. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching me. My heart pounded. I hadn't even reached the porch yet. I dropped the bag on the step and rang the doorbell. Silence. Then a voice, a young man, early 20s, called out from the shadows. "Hey, you've got the order?" I froze. Something in his tone made my skin crawl, and I noticed the flashlight in his hand, casting long, unnatural shadows across the doorway. The house itself looked abandoned, dusty, and forgotten, yet he stood there, waiting. I told him I couldn't just leave the food inside without payment, but he insisted, calm, almost too calm, asking me to put the bag on the kitchen table. My instincts screamed at me. I dropped the bag and sprinted back to my SUV, the man's eyes following me, unblinking, as if the darkness itself had come alive behind him. I drove away without looking back, my hands trembling on the wheel, unable to shake the feeling that I had just escaped something far worse than a failed delivery. I barely made it back to the main road, heart hammering, still replaying the strange man's expression in my mind. His eyes weren't just watching, they were calculating, cold and empty, like they belonged to someone who had been waiting in the shadows for years.
When I finally reached my parents' restaurant and told my dad what happened, he barely reacted. He only cared that I didn't get the food paid for. But I couldn't stop thinking about that farmhouse, the way the house seemed to breathe around the flashlight's beam, the eerie silence, the way the man's hands never wavered as he held the bag, his eyes piercing through the darkness like they could see right into my soul. I knew one thing for certain. If I had agreed to go inside, I probably would have never returned. Something about that house was alive in a wrong way, and the man wasn't its only resident. He was just the harbinger. After that night, I quit deliveries for my parents. I didn't even tell my friend at the restaurant. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, lingering just beyond the streetlights, waiting for the next delivery driver foolish enough to venture into the shadows. I drove a van for work, delivering products to a few small family-owned stores around the city. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I had just finished my last delivery. The warehouse where I had to drop the van off was 30 minutes away, and the streets were deserted, wet from an earlier rain, with only the sound of tires splashing through puddles. A car suddenly pulled up behind me at an intersection. No other cars were around, just me and them. At first, I ignored it, thinking it might turn off, but the vehicle followed, its headlights staring into my rear view like the eyes of a predator. Minutes passed, and their presence grew oppressive. I tried to shake them by slowing down and taking alternate routes, but they mirrored every move. My unease climbed into pure fear when the car bumped my van at a stop sign. Not a heavy crash, just enough to jolt my body and make my heart pound. I stepped out to check the accident, but a man was already at my window. His eyes were glazed, his grin unnerving, like he had been waiting for this moment. Behind my van, two more men appeared silently, framing me in the dim streetlight. The dread in my chest was cold, suffocating. The man at my window started talking, but his words slurred and meaningless, like he was drunk or insane. The other two lingered behind my van, watching me with predatory patience. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I was boxed in. Every shadow around me felt alive, moving with intentions I couldn't fathom. Suddenly, the man grabbed me, shoving me against the side of the van. Another lunged, forcing me to walk toward their car. Panic erupted in my chest. I knew if they got me inside that car, I might never be seen again. Summoning every ounce of strength, I fought back, kicking, twisting, and screaming into the empty, rain-slicked street. For 20 long seconds, it was a brutal struggle. Then, miraculously, the man shoved me away, jumped into his own car, and the trio sped off into the night. My heart pounded, my body trembled, and the sound of my own ragged breathing mixed with the echo of distant tires. I grabbed my phone, called the police, and prayed the memory of those cold, lifeless eyes would never haunt me again. I was working slow night at Domino's, sitting in the back, stacking pizza boxes and waiting for the next order. Just after 10 p.m., a man walked in. He looked exhausted, maybe drunk, eyes bloodshot, movements jerky and unsteady. My coworker was helping him at the counter, and I couldn't help but overhear. He ordered a medium pizza for delivery, but handed over a slip of paper with the address scribbled on it. Something about it felt wrong. My gut tightened. There was a shiver crawling down my spine as I watched him leave the shop.
The rain outside tapped like anxious fingers against the windows, and the flickering fluorescent lights made the shadows stretch and twist across the walls. 10 minutes later, I boxed the pizza and got on the road. Almost immediately, I noticed a car behind me, following too closely, headlights glaring like watchful eyes. At first, I thought it might be coincidence, but they stayed behind me, mimicking my every turn. The further I drove, the heavier the unease settled in my chest.
I followed the directions, pulling into a quiet, dimly lit neighborhood. The house at the end of the driveway was silent, all its lights off except a faint glow from inside. My pulse quickened. As I stepped onto the porch, a shadow detached itself from the corner. A man, tall, disheveled, and staring at me with hollow, intent eyes. My instinct screamed to run. He reached toward me, but I froze, unsure if he was going to grab me or just snatch the pizza. The tension hung thick, like the storm clouds that loomed above. I edged backward, heart pounding, and in that instant, bright headlights blazed across the yard. The homeowner's car had returned, and the stranger vanished into the shadows, leaving an icy silence in his wake. I sped away, hands gripping the wheel, a lingering chill crawling down my spine. Even when I returned to the shop, the dread didn't leave me. Something about that man, about the way he appeared and disappeared, felt far too deliberate, too sinister.
I used to deliver for my best friend's parents' small restaurant. The job was fine, but working under their strict eyes always felt uncomfortable. During my 3rd month, one night started as usual, a few quick deliveries, the quiet hum of the empty streets. Then a late delivery came in, an address 40 minutes away. I complained, pointing out that my shift would be over in 15 minutes, but they insisted. Driving through the long, dark roads, the houses became sparse, aged and strangely silent. The streetlights barely illuminated the cracked sidewalks. My unease grew with every turn. By the time I reached the last few houses, a row of 6 decrepit homes loomed around me. The delivery spots stood out, lights flickering inside, the air thick with the scent of decay. My hands trembled slightly as I grabbed the bag and approached the doorstep. Something about the house made my skin crawl, and the darkness inside seemed almost alive, pressing against me. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. Knocking only drew silence. The empty street amplified my heartbeat, every creak of the old house sounding like footsteps closing in. I called the customer's cell, but it went unanswered. Just then, a dim light flickered inside the house. A young man, early 20s, appeared at the door, holding a large flashlight in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. His eyes were cold, his expression unreadable. He silently gestured for me to place the food inside. The house was dusty, deserted, and smelled of mold and decay. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I refused, insisting he pay first. His eyes darkened, and he stepped onto the porch, looming closer. Every instinct screamed at me. This wasn't just a strange delivery. I dropped the bag and sprinted to my car. The man's gaze followed me, burning through the night. I floored it, leaving the house and its sinister aura behind. That night, I quit immediately, realizing some doors should never be opened. I was driving my van for work, doing late-night deliveries to a few family-owned stores. It was around 11 p.m., just finishing my last drop-off. The warehouse where I needed to leave the van was 30 minutes away. I drove for a few minutes when a car suddenly pulled up behind me at an empty intersection. No other cars were around, just me and them. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but the vehicle stayed glued behind me, headlights blindingly close. My unease grew. I slowed for a stop sign, hoping to shake them, but instead the car bumped my van. Nothing major, but enough to jolt me and make my heart race. As I stepped out to check, a man appeared at my window, smiling eerily, while two more lingered at the back of my van. They reeked of alcohol, stumbling and swaying unnaturally. My gut screamed danger. The empty roads, their silent stares, and the rain-slicked pavement made it feel like the night itself was closing in around me. The man at my window kept mumbling excuses, but his words slurred, almost threatening. The others didn't move. They just stood there, watching me like predators circling prey. My chest tightened, panic clawing at me. I tried to get back into the van, but before I could, the man grabbed me, shoving me against the side. Cold, heavy hands pressed me down, and I felt the raw intent in his grip. The others were rifling through the van, taking whatever they could, their movements precise yet chaotic. My adrenaline surged. I kicked, twisted, and fought back, every second a desperate battle against the impossible. Then, with a final shove, they tried forcing me into the back seat. I summoned every ounce of strength and broke free, sprinting toward the road as rain pelted my face. I heard the screech of tires, shouts, and then silence. They disappeared into the darkness as quickly as they had appeared. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, my heart hammering in rhythm with the storm. When the police arrived, the attackers were gone, leaving behind the eerie stillness of a night that felt alive with menace. I used to work for my best friend's parents' restaurant, delivering food late at night. Most nights were fine, but the job always had a strange tension. Their house rules were strict, and even small delays made them furious. On my third and final month there, something happened that would haunt me forever. It was a slow night, and the orders had dried up toward the back half of the shift. My friend's dad was grumbling constantly because I was waiting around. Around 8:30 p.m., just an hour from my shift's end, he picked up a phone call. I overheard him saying he could deliver a food order afterward. He made the food and handed me the bag. The delivery was far away, nearly 40 minutes out of town. I complained. It was late, and the drive alone would take almost an hour and a half, but he didn't care. By then, I knew there was no arguing. With the food bag in hand, I started driving, the road growing lonelier with every mile. As I neared the street, the houses were old, dark, and spaced far apart. The farther I drove, the more the shadows seemed to crawl over the worn wooden fences and cracked sidewalks. When I finally found the correct house, I parked on the street and stepped out with the food. A shiver ran down my spine. The place gave off an unnatural vibe, empty and dusty, as if no one had lived there for years. I rang the doorbell. Silence. I knocked, impatient, my nerves prickling at the stillness around me. The street was deserted, the houses dark. Then, a flicker of light moved inside the house. A young man, early 20s, appeared in the doorway. He held a large flashlight in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. His eyes were hollow, cold, and fixated on me. He didn't ask for the food. Instead, he pointed inside, waiting for me to enter. I froze. Something in his gaze screamed danger, a silent warning I couldn't ignore.
I hesitated, heart hammering in my chest. "Sorry, I'm in a rush," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can just leave the bag here on the porch." The man's face fell. He set the flashlight and grocery bag down, stepped forward onto the porch, and his eyes bore into mine like dark pits of something I couldn't name. Every instinct screamed at me to run. I dropped the bag and sprinted back to my car, adrenaline burning through my veins. As I slammed the door and locked it, I could feel his gaze on me, unmoving, following every step I took. The engine roared to life beneath my hands, and I peeled away from that cursed porch, still shaking from the encounter. For the rest of the drive home, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him chasing me. My friend's dad barely reacted when I told him what happened. He seemed more concerned that I didn't collect payment than the fact I had narrowly avoided a possible robbery or worse. That night, I knew I couldn't go back. I quit the job immediately, leaving behind the restaurant, the friends, and that shadowy figure that could have easily turned my last delivery into a nightmare I might never have escaped.